turn up a little bit the volume. Might give me a demonetization, but I don't care, because the music's part of the image, part of the atmosphere. Thank you very much, Notrina. Nice to hear or to read someone interacting with me. Usually no one is here on the channel. Trying to paint a cyberpunk dystopian city in the background, but I haven't really explored what kind of buildings I want to have, so it's a little bit experimental at the moment. Good question. I'm working currently on an animation movie that I try to make myself, and this is one of the scenes I'm sketching out for a character animation pipeline tech test, if you will. Trying to figure out what kind of animation style I want to have, and ideally I want to keep it as 2D as possible, but there will be 3D involved, so I want to know how much 3D I want to have in this animation, and yeah, trying to figure it all out. Yes, it will be in color. The final movie will be in color for sure. For this animation test, I'm not sure if I need color, because I want to have to achieve a result in a short period of time, and coloring takes usually a lot of time. Well, not a lot, but you know, it's an extra render pass. you like, I can give you a link to the environmental. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for the follow. I just wanted to drop a link in the chat for you to see the type of animation I'm trying to go for, and I have an environmental test already finished. Just have to find the link. There you go. If it interests you. Thank you for your interest. Yeah, it has definitely a video game vibe to it. I'm not entirely sure if I want to keep it, but yeah, at some point I have to make compromises, and you know, it has to drive the story. That's the main objective. It's actually also quite heavily inspired by game trailer style of animatics, so you have a point here. I'm not sure if I will finish it today, to be honest. I'm just streaming for fun for an hour or so, but I think I will continue working on it tomorrow. Yeah, you will see when I start streaming. You probably get a notification. I have to be honest, I'm also using a process that is a little bit slower than what I would do usually, because usually I would just photo bash the scenery together with a lot of reference material, but I want to, you know, in this case I wanted to do a little bit more line art just for fun. Yeah man, thanks for stopping by, and thank you very much for your sub, so see you around. think this background is more placeholder than anything else. In the storyline, this guy is actually a vendor, and he's supposed to be in a marketplace and sell stuff, sell some scrap or buy scrap. And I wanted to make a marketplace kind of background, but I'm slightly uninspired by this, and I don't know, just decided to go for a cityscape, but not sure if this was the best decision. But you never know until you try it out, so if it doesn't work, I know that it will not work. Then I will have to try something else. In case anyone is wondering, I'm streaming on 2 channels simultaneously, so if you don't see the questions posted in the chat, I'm either blabbering on my own and sharing my thoughts, or someone has asked me on some channel that you are not seeing. Since I'm in the mood of talking anyway, I have 3 screens. The one you see right now is my working screen. It's in the middle. It's huge. Well, it's relatively big. And I have 2 smaller screens on the side, one to the left of me and one to the right of me. To the left I have my streaming controls, all the chats and all the tracking information. And on the right there is my reference material. I usually skip through several photos that have something in them that looks interesting to me. For instance, now I have this picture here. It's a cityscape, and I try to pick some interesting patterns from it. You know, from the point of view of architecture, it's super interesting to play with repetitive rhythms. So you have this, I don't know, column of pillars here, and you have always this rhythm, so they repeat themselves, or the balconies here, or whatever you look at. And I really love to incorporate this into my world, since it's, you know, the world itself is a dystopian one. It's like a cyberpunk world, and there is a style of architecture, it's called brutalism, and I really love that one. It plays a lot with, you know, naked concrete walls and this very huge geometrical forms, and I like to combine this with this repetitive rhythm, you know, huge, monumental, raw buildings. This is the design idea behind my interpretation of the dystopian cyberpunk world. And as I said before, I usually go for a way quicker approach. I take pictures and bash them together in Photoshop, because it's way faster to create a basis where you can reiterate and build your ideas on top. But in this case I wanted to see if I'm any good at line drawing, and as you see, I don't use any perspective. I just want a simple dual layer construction. Doesn't satisfy me, to be honest, but who cares? looks like a wall with weird kind of panels. Not really like a city. I haven't painted cityscapes that often, so might be also a question of routine and practice. There are many different things that factor in when you paint. Sometimes get nervous because I expect a different result that I'm getting when I paint, and then this makes me more hectical in my paintings or drawings, and the quality suffers. I think every artist out there knows exactly what I'm talking about. So expectation is one of the key factors in art. And sometimes it's also a question of detail. Most people I know, or many teachers I know, always said, yeah, go from the broad strokes to the small strokes. That might be true for certain approaches, but especially for line art, it's all in the details, man. The images only start to work if you have very clean lines and very many details. At least in my opinion. I mean, you can see it with this guy. He has so many strokes in his face, but this kind of makes it rough, and you can understand the geometry by the angle of the strokes. So yeah, many different approaches to one and the same thing. I think it's also a question of the artist's attitude. Some artists paint a face with very few strokes, and these strokes have all the information they need. Some artists need a lot of strokes, like I do. I like to scribble around until I see something interesting inside the strokes and erase everything out that I don't need. I think someone said, I'm not sure who it was, Michelangelo or someone, if he sees a rock, he already sees the carved out sculpture, you know. And when I look at a bunch of lines, I start to see something that I want to extract out of them. I don't necessarily see it on a blank piece of paper. That doesn't help me a lot, you know. But I could ramble on about this topic for hours. It's a very interesting methodology and philosophical debate. Yeah, here it starts to work a little bit. But yeah, it's very experimental at the moment. It's more about the shape language than the motif at this stage. This is the reason why I'm Yeah, by the way, at this time I usually have a 24-hour disconnect from my internet provider, so they kick me out for a couple of seconds, which is really annoying, but I forget it all the time, whenever I play or whenever I stream. So sorry for the disconnect. Sure if I like this. I mean, it's interesting to look at, but it doesn't fit the scene really. What do I do about it? To be honest, I'm thinking about ditching the background and start over, because I don't like the direction where it's going. But I have to make a roadmap for a second approach. What do I want? Maybe something less chaotic. And maybe I'd also try a very different style. Instead of line art, I go for values. This might give other ideas. Oh yeah, I can feel how my computer is really slowed down. Streaming and painting doesn't go along quite well. And now I think I'm gonna photo bash a little bit, because it's too tricky to figure something out on the fly. So I need some technical help. Mode, grayscale. I actually really like this technique because it gives you so many values to work with, and textures and ideas and patterns, and a certain degree of complexity that is really difficult to achieve if you start by scratch, or from scratch, sorry. At least in my opinion. It's the technique I prefer the most. It gives the quickest results, and you don't waste too much time. I mean, line art is fine, but it's not entirely my most preferred technique. Like you see, like this, I have an instant atmosphere in this corner, and I can check if it works or if it doesn't. And I can continue doing this with many other images. For instance, like this. Put it over here. Combine it, see if it works out. I probably will do a similar thing for the face in a later stream. For now I'm just searching something that fits the background, that gives me a good feeling. I cannot proceed if if you're not satisfied with what you currently have. To get a little bit more perspective into that, so I'm trying several things. Don't expect this image to be at any stage further than what I've started out with, because highly experimental thing. Just trying to figure out what doesn't work. mind, I always imagined the scenery to take place at some kind of market or bazaar. I mean, the whole world and scenery is very much inspired by Berlin, because I live here, and you always have this Sunday markets with a lot of trash that people sell, and it has an interesting flair to it, so I tried to catch this up and dystoperize it, if you want to call it that. Basically make it really grim and dark, and yeah. I mean, some people are really good with line art because it's their subject matter. They usually paint a similar motif most of the time, and they're very comfortable with line art, but I'm not. I have so many other themes and topics that I have to cover. Unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of time in this regard. So I have to be a little bit more creative with my approaches and figure out alternatives that are quicker. The smudge tool I'm using all the time, this one here, is probably my favorite tool. If someone would ask what's your favorite brush, I would say it's not a brush, it's a smudge tool, for the simple reason because it creates gradients. You know, you can stroke from one dark piece of canvas to a light piece of canvas and it creates a gradient. And gradients is basically how light, I don't want to say works, but one of the most, how should I explain it? Whenever you look at a surface, you always have gradients. There isn't one real life scenario where you have a evenly lit surface. You constantly have gradients because of the fall off of the light, and you save a lot of time by creating the gradients with a simple brush stroke. To make it short, of course there's quite a bit of science behind it, but it's already, how should I say, from an artist's point of view, it's enough to know that it's a highly efficient tool. I mean, I have something interesting going on here, but it doesn't fit the perspective, unfortunately. it. I like this one. Maybe I can fit it in somehow. But where and how? I'm not really sure. I really like how dense the detail is in this image. It just has a super weird perspective. Super weird. But this is interesting. It looks very much Soviet-like. Though I probably have never seen a Soviet building with so much air conditioning on it, but who cares? But it might give me a basis for a perspective, because right now I'm just slapping around some values, nothing more. I mean, if someone is rewatching the stream and wondering what the hell am I doing, it's like a super honest display of me not knowing how to approach something, or I haven't really. Usually I try to research a little bit and have a plan for what to do and, you know, how to go about it, but in this case, super brutal honesty. Just started streaming without any plan and trying to figure it out, so there will be a lot of back and forth and experimental things. But that might be also very interesting, because when I started out as an artist, I usually watched a lot of Feng Zhu videos. Maybe some of you know them. You know, Feng Zhu has been a very, very famous concept artist, and he started like in one of the first, I don't want to call them tutorials, but a series of videos where he explained how he goes about designing things, and he was so super fast, so he always felt a little bit weird for being very slow and bad, and yeah, how should I say? I think some of it was, I don't want to say scripted, but well prepared based on his experience. And without any tutor, you get the impression that you have to be that fast in order to produce whatever he was producing, but in reality you have to start out slow and build your own workflow and understand what works and what doesn't work. And yeah, it's tricky. So you always see the videos with a good result, but you never see, or rarely see, videos where someone fails. There is another artist, he's called Cynics. I think he also has a Twitch channel, and I really applaud him because he is also very honest about his process. He likes to talk about when he screws up and doesn't like how things go, and yeah, you rarely see this. Often it's a very polished result, and of course, you know, it has to be entertaining and quick and blah blah blah. But since I'm starting out, I think I can afford to screw around and, yeah, mess things up. I hope. People leaving the stream might disagree. building freaks me out. It's so weirdly tilted. Well, I might erase it later anyway, it's just for me to give me some kind of grip. Again, a very brutally honest stream with many mistakes. Yeah. Mistakes are good, you need them, they're vital. They're extremely vital. By making them, you rule out what you don't want, and this is good. This is part of the process. Everyone who expects you to give great results from the beginning has a bad methodology of working. Maybe I'm a little bit too honest here, but this is my opinion. I mean, whenever I work for a client, it's not about what they want, it's about what they don't want in the first iterations. And then you have a grasp on what they actually need. And by admitting that you're willing to do mistakes and you embrace making mistakes, you actually gain a lot of freedom in your work. You get way more experimental, and you get, how do I call it, more brave. But this is all my opinion. Just one man's opinion. Yeah. As you probably will know, this is I'm also not satisfied with this one. It's just the second iteration of the background, but it has some interesting aspects that I like, but overall it's not what I'm looking for. So I will probably ditch this one soon as well and see how I continue. I mean, in one version in my head I see cranes in the background and I see a vast distance, like a cityscape, but on the other hand the marketplace where this character stands has to be very dense. You know, it's in the center of the city and you barely see the sky, especially also with the perspective because it's slightly above his eyes. Not sure if this is combinable, or maybe the market is on an elevated place in the city. Who knows? This is something I tried to figure out. Again, you can treat yourself like you treat your clients. Maybe you don't know what you want, you only know what you don't want when you see it. Oh yeah, by the way, Yugi Dodge, thank you for the subscription, and Neutrina, thank you for the subscription as well, just to mention it. I don't know. What shall we do with the drunken sailor? First of all, this guy is too bright. Yeah, it looks better. I have to give him a clearer separation from the background. The background itself is also has too much contrast, but this is not such big problem because you can always dim it down a little bit. You know, with a soft brush, you can give it more distance. I'm more concerned about the perspective and the narrative, which, to be honest, doesn't work for me as of yet. What I really like to have, it's a little bit cliche in terms of design, but tilted rooftops, or how do you call them? Not canvases, but like roofs made out of plastic. I don't know how it's called. It's not rigid, but it's... Damn, my English. Like a cloth, basically. Because it has this... It has a stroke that usually cuts through the geometry. This is what I want to say. It's interesting to play with the contrast. When you're painting cityscapes, you always have this thing that I've talked about earlier, this rhythm, this very straight lines and this repetitive patterns. And it's really cool visually to just break with it when you have something tilted. It might be a pillar that has, you know, angles, which is typical for dystopian architecture, but it could also be tilted rooftops or something that is assembled, miss and match style, doesn't have a rhythm, is a little bit more chaotic, or things made out of cloth that hang, so you have also kind of organic shapes in your image, and it breaks with the rhythm and creates an interesting design contrast. But I'm also not sure where to apply it right now. Whoops. These images not having the same perspective is a little bit tricky to handle, but I don't mind. I rather need it for happy accidents. Chaos, chaos, chaos. Okay, the second iteration is also interesting. Here's the first one, a very flat idea. I mean, it works because it's easy, but it doesn't have the effect I'm looking for. The second one, yeah, it's a little bit more crazy. I'm gonna ditch this one as well and try a third one. And with the third one, I want to start out with an image that maybe, hopefully, has the perspective which this guy has. But I hope I can find something along those lines. Maybe something like this. I don't know if this works. Whoops. interesting. Gonna try something. I use this one and try to alter it somehow. This looks about right. It's way too bright. Maybe we can change that somehow. Crucial thing here is probably the horizon line. We have to memorize where it is. Usually when you experiment like this, don't be afraid to toss away all the stuff you don't like. Usually at some point, maybe not in the same day, maybe at another day, you get one piece of the image that starts to work for you. It could be just a little corner where you think, okay, this has the right feel, and you can extrapolate from that. So you can basically build up from this corner, and it's just a matter of time when you find it. So let's see, maybe we will find it this time. Super experimental. Let's see, I actually, since I like part of the elements from the second iteration, I might just try to merge them together and see if we can kind of come up with something that is interesting. Actually, that already looks kind of interesting. It looks super abstract, but there are some shapes that are highly interesting for me. Maybe I can switch it and see if we... no, doesn't give me anything. Sorry, I'm just checking if someone has wrote something somewhere. And if you ask me, you can stack image upon image upon image and blend them together and smudge around until you get what you're looking for. I found that whenever I try or decide to stick with, you know, just a couple of reference materials, it's usually doesn't give me good results. I don't know why, but you need a certain number of iterations to get where you want, except you have a very, very clear vision of what you want. But yeah, this is something entirely different. We're here in the experimental zone. Whoops. Still a little bit too much going on, but nothing that can't be handled. That's an amazing tool, by the way, the curves. Simple mathematics, but highly effective. The problem I have right now is I'm getting lost in the complexity of the image. I'm not as friendly to experimentation as I should be, because I still haven't figured out the perspective. It's still not what I'm looking for, and it doesn't give me an alternative that is better than what I'm looking for. And the styles start to bite each other, because the face is still in one style and the background is in another one, and it's kind of inconsistent, it's kind of annoying. Still have to experiment a little bit more, I assume. That's interesting. It has a weird tilted perspective, but I don't know. Gives me some kind of grip. mean, once again, I don't expect to have something finished, just expect to have some input that I can ponder upon. What about this one? It's a trick when you start out with your character and then have to add the background afterwards. You might run into trouble. Oops. I mean, it's not bad, but it's... I don't know what's wrong. Something's a little bit off. It's the composition. Sure. I mean, maybe he doesn't have to have a depth in the background. Maybe he's standing in front of a wall, but that would probably be my next approach then. Since the background isn't that important anyway, but sooner or later I have to figure out the design of the cityscape or get a better feeling for it, so I might as well use this chance to initiate a thought process or something like that. is a thing I usually try to avoid whenever I start out an image. I usually try to get the character and the background in one concept, but yeah, I screwed that one up. Focused on something else, but you know, doesn't matter. I will fix it. Probably just used too many different techniques, I assume. I may have to look for some reference material with a similar camera shot with a guy's face to get a couple of ideas what to do with this whole thing. Because right now I'm running out of ideas, but you can see, yeah, we tried several things. We're getting to an interesting texture, and we do know what we don't want at this point. So yeah, I think, yeah, I streamed for 1.5 hours. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you everyone who subscribed, and see you later. I will stream today again, Saturday at 4 p.m. Central European Time. Yeah. On Twitch and YouTube, and watch me work. So yeah, if you like, you can join in. I would be very happy to see you again. See you.